Let's talk a bit about the Gem Temple. There is a very well known theory that the temple was built in the image of a giant fusion gem, one made from the post war crystal gems, that being, of course, rose quartz, garnet, pearl, and amethyst. The temple seems to have a heart powering it, a heart made of crystal like a giant crystal battery that we've seen powering a lot of the gem artifacts and locations. Perhaps this crystal heart is symbolic of the fact that the temple is based off of a living creature. Looking at the crystal gems and the position of their gemstones, and taking into account that gemstone positioning does not change going from an individual gem to a fusion, except only in hypothetical circumstances, the positions of the gemstones carved onto the body of the temple seem to match up to the locations of the gemstones on the crystal gems, much like they would on an actual fusion. You can also see similarities between Alexandrite and the Temple fusion. They both have multiple arms and a face covered in a mask which acts as a second face. The temple, however, if built to scale, is much larger than Alexandrite. It also has thick flowing hair like Rose. I firmly believe that this fusion exists. In fact, I believe we have confirmation of it as of historical friction, when in Pearl's version of the story of Captain Dewey, a giant crystal gem that is presumably 50 feet tall based on previous dialogue, appears and saves the ship from a giant gem monster. While the details don't perfectly match up, the figure used in the play was made by Stephen and Jamie based on Pearl's description, so it may not be 100% accurate. If you guys would like me to expand on the temple fusion theory some more, let me know, but the temple fusion theory has been done many times before. So instead of talking more about that theory directly, I want to discuss what I think the fusion's purpose is for existing in the narrative of the show. There has to be a reason why Rebecca Sugar and the Crooniverse would make this character, other than to infuriate us, right? Right? Anyway, all jokes aside, some fans of the show think that this fusion was used to win the war and drive the homeworlders from Earth. But of course it wasn't. The crystal gems didn't have Amethyst during the war. She could not have been involved in a fusion that was used during the war. So what reason would they have to form this fusion? Well, I think historical friction gave us the answer. I think hundreds of years ago, or longer, there were more powerful gem monsters that were larger and more dangerous than the ones we've seen today. That the ones in modern times are just remnants, and that a larger gem was sometimes required to fight these larger creatures. I think there are two possibilities as to why the temple is in the visage of this gem. Either it simply became the symbol of the true unified strength of the crystal gems, and that's why it was chosen as the visage for the temple, and the gems created the temple themselves, or the gems created a temple within a carving made by Captain Dewey himself as a thank you for saving his ship. So if this was the purpose of the temple fusion in the past, so what purpose could the temple fusion have going forward in the series? Can the temple fusion even be created anymore? Well, we know a few things that are relevant to this. We know that Homeworld has a renewed interest in Earth, whether it is just because of the cluster, which seems to be a persistent threat, or for other reasons. Homeworld, after thousands of years, suddenly seems interested in Earth again. We also know that Stephen has Rose's power, and he could, in theory, fuse with the other crystal gems to make a fusion that is, at the very least, a variant of the Temple fusion in order to oppose Homeworld, or possibly even the cluster. After all, Rose clearly had many more allies during the war that the modern crystal gems just don't have anymore. If Homeworld does return in full force, the crystal gems would need an edge, and a giant fusion with the powers of all of the crystal gems, that would certainly qualify as such an edge. If you allow me a bit of pure speculation for a moment, I think I even have a candidate for the name of this fusion, that being Fullerite. It is a man-made crystal harder than diamond, which is made by fusing smaller components together. It takes a little bit of work to make, which could be symbolic of the work that it takes to create and maintain a fusion. It is made by combining materials, so in a way it is a fusion itself, and it is harder than diamond, or in other words, it is stronger than the Diamond Authority. The only thing that makes this name unlikely is that the smaller components that are fused together to make Fullerite are all the same. They don't combine a bunch of different gemstones together to make it, obviously. So like I said, take this last bit of conjecture as you will. I'm not even all that confident in it myself. In fact, I 100% guarantee that Rebecca Sugar and her entire crew are much cleverer people than I am. I'm sure that whatever they end up naming this fusion will be much more appropriate. But what do you think? Not just about this potential name for the fusion, but about anything in this video. Would you like me to talk more about the Temple fusion theory itself? Do you think that this fusion had or has an entirely different purpose than the ones I've listed here? Let's get a conversation started in the comments section down below. This has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.